Jake Morrison stood in front of the massive mirror, adjusting the formal collar of his diplomatic uniform. The fabric felt strange against his skin, a blend of earth materials and Valorian silk that shimmered with a faint purple glow. Behind him, Ambassador Lisa Brennan watched with careful eyes. "You understand what this means, don't you?" Lisa asked quietly. Her voice carried the weight of someone who had spent years navigating alien politics. Jake nodded slowly. "I'm marrying an alien queen to keep Earth safe." "Pretty simple when you think about it." "Nothing about this is simple," Lisa replied. She walked closer, her footsteps echoing in the preparation chamber. "The Valorians are powerful. They control 50 star systems. They have technology we're still trying to understand. And they see humans as children playing with toys." Jake turned to face her. At 34 years old, he had the build of someone who stayed in shape but didn't show it off. His brown hair was cut short and neat. His gray eyes were calm, almost bored. But Lisa knew better. She had read his file. She knew what he had done before becoming a diplomat. "They think we're weak," Jake said. "It wasn't a question. They think we're clever but fragile," Lisa corrected. "They've watched us for 20 years. They see our art, our technology, our diplomacy, but they've never seen us fight. Not really. And that's good. Let them think what they want." Jake smiled slightly. It was the kind of smile that didn't reach his eyes. "That's always been the plan, hasn't it?" Lisa didn't answer. She didn't need to. The doors to the chamber opened with a soft hiss. A Valorian attendant entered, tall and elegant. The Valorians looked like insects that had been given humanoid form by some cosmic artist. They had smooth, chitinous skin that gleamed like polished stone. Their faces were angular with large, multifaceted eyes that could see in spectrums humans couldn't. This one bowed slightly, a gesture of respect. "The ceremony will begin in 1 hour," the attendant said in perfect English. The Valorians were good with languages. "Queen Zarathix requests that you be ready. One seeing. One seeing. One seeing." "I'm ready now," Jake said. The attendant studied him for a moment, then left without another word. Lisa moved to the window. Outside, the Valorian capital city stretched to the horizon. Towers of crystalline metal rose into a pink sky. Flying vehicles moved between them, like schools of fish. It was beautiful and completely alien. "She's curious about you," Lisa said. "The Queen. My sources say she's been asking questions about Earth culture, about human emotions. She finds us interesting." "Good," Jake replied. "Interesting is better than threatening. Just remember," Lisa said, turning back to him. "She's 347 years old. She's seen species rise and fall. Don't underestimate her, because she's curious." Jake picked up a small data pad from the table. On it were notes about Valorian customs, their history, their art. He had memorized all of it weeks ago, but he kept reading anyway. Preparation was everything. The hour passed quickly. Soon, Jake found himself walking down a long corridor made of what looked like living crystal. It pulsed with soft light, responding to his footsteps. Valorian guards lined the walls, each one carrying weapons that hummed with energy. They watched him pass, but said nothing. The ceremony hall was enormous. Thousands of Valorians filled the space, their chitinous bodies catching the light. Diplomats from a dozen other species stood in designated areas. Jake could see the fish-like aquarians in their water tanks. The rock-like Storians stood motionless like statues, and scattered among them were humans, maybe 50 in total, looking small and fragile. At the far end of the hall, on a raised platform, stood Queen Zarathix. Jake had seen pictures, of course, videos, holograms, but nothing prepared him for seeing her in person. She was taller than any Valorian he had met, nearly 8 feet. Her chitinous armor was a deep purple that seemed to absorb light. Her eyes were larger, more expressive. On her head, she wore a crown of living metal that moved and shifted like liquid. She was watching him as he approached. Jake walked with steady steps. Not too fast, not too slow. When he reached the platform, he bowed in the Valorian way, one hand over his chest, the other extended palm up, a gesture of respect and openness. "Jake Morrison of Earth," Zarathix said. Her voice was melodic, with harmonics that human vocal cords couldn't produce. "You come before the Valorian Empire to join your life with mine. Do you do this freely?" "I do," Jake replied. His voice was steady. "Do you understand that this union binds not just us, but our peoples?" "I do." Zarathix tilted her head slightly, studying him. For a moment, Jake wondered what she saw. A human who looked unremarkable by most standards. Someone who had spent the last 5 years pushing papers and attending diplomatic meetings. Someone safe. "Then let us begin," she said. The ceremony was long and complex. It involved rituals from both cultures. Jake and Zarathix exchanged items of significance. He gave her a simple book of earth poetry. She gave him a crystal that contained the recorded history of her family line. They spoke vows in both English and the clicking, musical language of the Valorians. When it was done, Zarathix placed one long-fingered hand on Jake's shoulder. It was the Valorian equivalent of a kiss. "You are now part of the royal house," she said quietly, speaking only to him. "I will protect you, as I protect all that is mine." Jake looked up at her. "And I will stand beside you," he said. "No matter what comes." Something flickered in her large eyes. Curiosity? Maybe. Or amusement. The crowd erupted in sounds of celebration. Different species made different noises. The Valorians created a clicking harmony. The humans applauded. The Aquarians released bubbles that popped with musical tones. Jake and Zarathix walked together through the crowd. Diplomats bowed. Nobles offered congratulations. Commander Vexlar, the head of the Valorian military, watched from a distance. His expression was unreadable, but Jake felt the suspicion radiating from him. Later, in the quiet of the royal chambers, Zarathix asked Jake about Earth. "Tell me," she said. "What do humans value most?" Jake thought for a moment. They were sitting in a room that blended Valorian and human design. Crystalline walls met wooden furniture. It was strange, but somehow worked. "We value freedom," Jake said finally. "And we value each other. Family. Friends. We're a social species. We need connection. And yet you came here alone," Zarathix observed. "Away from your family, your friends, to marry someone you had never met." "I did," Jake agreed. "Because sometimes we sacrifice what we value to protect what we love." Zarathix was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "You are more complex than I expected, Jake Morrison." Jake smiled. Humans usually are. That night, as Jake lay in the unfamiliar royal bed, he thought about Earth. About the life he had left behind. About the mission he had accepted. Ambassador Brennan's words echoed in his mind. Let them think what they want. He had work to do. The palace was large, and he needed to learn every corridor, every exit, every security system. Not because he expected trouble, but because preparation was everything. And Jake Morrison had learned long ago that peace was something you protected, not something you assumed would last. 3 months had passed since the wedding, and Jake had settled into palace life with surprising ease. Each morning, he woke before dawn and walked through the royal gardens. The Valorians thought he was meditating or enjoying the peace. They didn't realize he was memorizing patrol patterns and guard rotations. Zarathix found him fascinating. She had expected the human to be overwhelmed by palace life, by the constant presence of alien beings, by the weight of his position. Instead, Jake adapted like water finding its level. He learned Valorian customs quickly. He remembered names and faces. He asked thoughtful questions about their history and culture. "You are not what I expected," Zarathix told him one evening. They were dining together in her private chambers. something they had started doing regularly. Most humans I have met are anxious around us. Nervous. But you seem comfortable. Jake smiled as he ate something that looked like purple fruit but tasted like chicken. The Valorian food was strange, but he had eaten worse during his military days. Should I be nervous? Many would be, Zarathix replied. She watched him with her large, multifaceted eyes. You live among a species that could kill you without effort. You are far from your homeworld. You have no real power here. Keet. End. 2. Keet. You. Keet. You. Keet. True, Jake said. But being nervous wouldn't change any of that. So why waste energy on it? Zarathix made a sound that was the Valorian equivalent of laughter. It was like wind chimes mixed with clicking. Your species is strange. You accept dangerous situations with remarkable calm. We've had a lot of practice, Jake said quietly. She tilted her head, curious. Practice? At being in danger? Practice at surviving it, Jake corrected. He took another bite of food, then changed the subject. Tell me about the northern provinces. I've been reading about their art traditions. Zarathix allowed the change in topic. She didn't push. That was something Jake appreciated about her. She was patient, observant, willing to wait for information rather than demand it. As weeks passed, their relationship deepened. What had started as a political arrangement began to feel like something more genuine. Jake found himself actually enjoying Zarathix's company. She was intelligent and thoughtful. She had a dry sense of humor that surprised him, and despite being an alien insect queen, she had emotions that weren't so different from human ones. One night, Zarathix asked Jake to teach her about Earth music. He found recordings on his datapad and played them for her. Classical symphonies, jazz, rock, and roll. She listened to everything with intense focus. This one, she said when a particular song played. It was an old blues number. Slow and melancholy. This speaks of loss. It does, Jake confirmed. The musician who wrote it lost someone he loved. We have similar music, Zarathix said. Songs of loss and longing. Perhaps all intelligent species understand grief. Maybe that's what makes us intelligent, Jake suggested. The ability to love something enough that losing it hurts. Zarathix reached out and gently touched Jake's hand. Her chitinous fingers were cool and smooth. I am glad you are here, Jake Morrison. Even if the circumstances were political, I find I value your presence. Jake squeezed her hand gently. I'm glad too. But while Jake built a relationship with the Queen, not everyone in the palace was happy about the marriage. Commander Vexlar made his disapproval clear in subtle ways. He questioned why humans were allowed in secure areas. He suggested that Jake's quarters be moved farther from the Queen's chambers. He assigned extra guards to watch the human diplomat. Jake never complained. He smiled politely at Vexlar. He followed every rule perfectly. He gave the commander no reason to act on his suspicions. But Jake watched Vexlar too. He noted which guards were loyal to the commander. He observed who came and went from Vexlar's offices. He gathered information the way other people breathed. One afternoon, Jake made a simple request to Zarathix. I'd like to create a small earth garden in the palace. Something to remind me of home. Just a small space. Nothing major. Zarathix agreed immediately. Of course. Choose whatever location you prefer. I will have the palace staff assist you. Jake chose a spot near the royal chambers. It was close to several important corridors. It had good sight lines. And best of all, it required modifications to the walls, which meant Jake had an excuse to study the palace's structural systems. The garden took 2 weeks to build. Jake worked alongside Valorian workers, asking questions about the palace's construction, its security systems, its emergency protocols. The workers thought he was just curious. They answered his questions freely. When the garden was finished, it was beautiful. Earth flowers bloomed in alien soil. A small fountain bubbled with water from a Valorian spring. Jake had even managed to grow a rose bush, complete with thorns. "It's lovely," Zarathix said when she saw it. "But why roses? They seem aggressive for a garden meant for peace." "I like the reminder," Jake said, running his finger carefully along a thorn. Zarathix didn't fully understand, but she accepted the explanation. During these months, Jake maintained regular contact with Ambassador Brennan through official diplomatic channels. But he also sent coded messages through secure channels that the Valorians didn't know existed. The messages were simple status reports. Everything is stable. No immediate threats. Continuing observation. But there were concerning signs. Small protests had begun in the capital city. Groups calling themselves the Purity Front were speaking out against alien integration. They claimed that Zarathix was weakening the Empire by allowing inferior species into positions of importance. So far, the protests were peaceful. But the rhetoric was getting harsher. "Do you worry about the protesters?" Jake asked Zarathix one evening. She waved, one hand dismissively. "Every ruler faces dissent. It is the nature of power. As long as they remain peaceful, they have the right to speak. And if they don't remain peaceful, then the Royal Guard will handle it," Zarathix said confidently. "The Valorian military is the finest in this sector of space. No radical group could threaten this palace." Jake nodded but said nothing. He had learned that military confidence often came just before military disaster. Ambassador Brennan visited the palace for a diplomatic reception. She and Jake spoke privately in the Earth Garden. "Intelligence suggests something is brewing," Lisa said quietly. "We're picking up unusual communications. Military movements that don't match normal patterns. Someone is planning something." "Here?" Jake asked. "We don't know yet. But be ready, just in case." "Always am," Jake replied. Lisa looked around the garden, noting its strategic position. "Nice location you picked." "What?" "I thought so," Jake said with a slight smile. That night, Jake lay awake in the royal chambers. Zarathix slept beside him, her breathing slow and steady. She trusted him completely. She believed she understood humans, peaceful, curious, diplomatic. She had told him once that she admired how humans sought solutions through talking rather than fighting. Jake hadn't corrected her. Let her believe what she wanted. It was safer that way. Safer for everyone. He thought about the decorative panels he had requested be installed in the bedroom. Panels that supposedly contained Earth artwork and cultural items. Zarathix had approved them without question. Why wouldn't she? Her husband was simply making their shared space more comfortable. She didn't know what was really behind those panels, and Jake hoped she would never have to find out. But if Lisa's intelligence was right, if something was coming, then Jake would be ready. He had spent 3 months preparing, learning, observing, building relationships with palace staff, understanding the security systems, creating backup plans for his backup plans, because that was what humans did. They hoped for peace. They built relationships and sought understanding. But they also prepared for war. Every single time. It was how they had survived 10,000 years of fighting each other before they ever left Earth. Jake closed his eyes and let sleep take him. Tomorrow he would smile and be diplomatic. He would discuss art with Zarathix and attend boring political meetings. He would be exactly what everyone expected him to be, until the moment he needed to be something else. The state dinner was supposed to be a celebration of unity. Diplomats from 15 different species filled the grand hall, sharing food and conversation. Jake sat beside Zarathix at the high table, playing his role perfectly. He smiled at the right moments. He made small talk with a Storian ambassador, who communicated by vibrating the crystals embedded in his rock-like body. He was the picture of a diplomatic consort, but his eyes never stopped moving. He counted the guards. He noted the exits. He watched the body language of everyone in the room, and he saw what others missed. The guards were tense, Their positions were slightly off from normal, and Commander Vexlar was nowhere to be seen. Jake leaned close to Zarathix. "Where is your military commander tonight?" She glanced around, surprised. "I assumed he was here. Perhaps he is dealing with some minor matter." "Maybe," Jake said. But his instincts were screaming at him. Something was wrong. The explosion came at exactly 9 in the evening. It wasn't in the palace, but close enough to shake the walls. The grand hall went silent. Then, alarms began to wail throughout the building. Zarathix stood immediately. "Report!" she demanded. A guard rushed to her side. "Majesty, there are attacks across the capital. The military barracks, the communication center, the power stations. We're under coordinated assault." "By whom?" Zarathix's voice was sharp. Before the guard could answer, the main doors to the grand hall exploded inward. Valorian soldiers poured through, but these weren't royal guards. They wore different armor, marked with a symbol Jake recognized from the protests. "The Purity Front." "Nobody move," the lead soldier shouted. "Queen Zarathix, you are hereby placed under arrest for crimes against the Valorian people. Your alliance with inferior species ends tonight." The hall erupted in chaos. Diplomats screamed. Guards drew weapons. But the attacking soldiers outnumbered the royal guards 3-1. Energy weapons fired, filling the air with the smell of ozone. Several guards fell. Jake grabbed Zarathix's arm. "We need to move." "My people," she protested, looking at the panicking diplomats. "We'll die if you stay here," Jake said firmly. "You're the target. Draw them away and give everyone else a chance." Zarathix hesitated for only a moment, then nodded. Jake pulled her toward a side door, the same one he had memorized months ago as an emergency exit. 2 royal guards followed them, loyal soldiers named Crix and Thala. They ran through corridors that echoed with alarms and weapons fire. Behind them, Jake could hear the coup soldiers giving chase. The palace was under full assault. This wasn't some minor uprising. This was a complete military takeover. "The Central Guard Station," Zarathix gasped as they ran. "We can rally forces there." "It's already taken," Jake said. This was coordinated. They hit everything at once. "How do you know?" Thala demanded. "Because it's what I would do," Jake replied. They reached the royal chambers, and Jake sealed the door behind them. It was thick and reinforced, but it wouldn't hold forever. Through the windows, they could see the city burning. Explosions lit the night sky. Zarathix moved to the communication panel. "I'll call for help. The outer military bases. Jammed," Jake said, checking his own device. "All signals are blocked." They thought of everything. The sounds of weapons fire grew closer. The coup soldiers were coming. Zarathix looked at Jake with something he had never seen in her eyes before. Fear. "I have failed," she said quietly. "My empire falls tonight." "No," Jake said firmly. He walked to the decorative panel on the wall, the one he had installed 3 months ago. "It doesn't fall. Not tonight." He pressed a hidden switch. The panel slid open, revealing a hidden compartment. Inside was equipment that made the Valorian guards step back in shock. Human military weapons, body armor, tactical gear, enough to outfit a small squad. Zarathix stared at the weapons, then at Jake. You said you were a diplomat." "I am a diplomat," Jake said as he pulled on body armor that was designed to fit under his clothes. The material was advanced Earth military tech, lightweight but incredibly strong. But humans don't send unarmed diplomats to alien empires. We learned that lesson the hard way. "You've been planning this," Zarathix said. There was accusation in her voice, but also confusion. "You knew this would happen?" I didn't know," Jake corrected as he loaded a compact rifle that looked like a toy compared to Valorian energy weapons but was far more deadly. "But I prepared for the possibility. That's what humans do. We hope for peace and prepare for war." He turned to Crix and Thala. "Can you two use these?" He held out 2 human pistols. The guards looked at the weapons uncertainly. "We have never seen such designs," Crick said. "Point at target. Squeeze, trigger. Keep squeezing until target stops moving," Jake instructed. He showed them how to load and check the weapons. These are kinetic weapons. They shoot small metal projectiles very fast. They'll punch through Valorian armor. Aim for center mass. The door shuddered as something hit it from outside. The coup soldiers had arrived. Jake's entire demeanor had changed. The relaxed diplomat was gone. His movements were precise and efficient. His voice was calm, but carried absolute authority. Zarathix realized with growing shock that she was seeing the real Jake Morrison for the first time. "How long can we hold them?" Thala asked, gripping her new weapon. "We're not holding," Jake said. He pulled up a hologram of the palace on his device. "We're moving. The palace has 17 emergency exits. I've mapped them all. We go to exit 9, through the maintenance tunnels. Those tunnels are not secure," Crix protested. "They're used by servants, which means the coup soldiers won't be watching them as carefully," Jake replied. "Security doctrine says, watch the obvious exits. We use the ones nobody thinks about." The door burst open. Coup soldiers poured in. Jake didn't hesitate. He dropped to one knee and fired in controlled bursts. The human rifle made a sharp cracking sound, completely different from Valorian energy weapons. 3 soldiers fell before the others realized they were under fire. The human bullets tore through their armor like it was paper. The Valorians were strong and fast, but they had never faced human military weapons before. Their armor was designed to stop energy weapons, not high-velocity metal projectiles. Crix and Thala fired their pistols, awkward at first but getting the idea quickly. More soldiers fell. "Move!" Jake shouted. He threw something small that rolled across the floor. The Valorians looked at it curiously for a moment, before it exploded in a flash of light and sound. A flashbang grenade. While the soldiers were stunned, Jake led the group through a side door. They ran through corridors that Jake had memorized months ago. Every turn, every door, he knew them all. More soldiers appeared ahead. Jake took them down with precise shots. He moved like someone who had done this before, many times. His breathing was steady. His hands didn't shake. This was what he had been trained for, years ago, before he became a diplomat. "You lied to me," Zarathix said as they ran. There was hurt in her voice. "I didn't lie," Jake replied, checking corners before they moved. "I just didn't tell you everything. There's a difference. You said humans were peaceful." "We are," Jake said. He shot another soldier who appeared in a doorway. "We prefer peace. We seek diplomatic solutions. But we're also really, really good at violence when we need to be. You can't survive 10,000 years of constant warfare without learning a few things." They reached a maintenance access door. Jake opened it, revealing a dark tunnel system below. "Down," he ordered. Quickly, as they climbed down, Zarathix looked at her husband with new eyes. She had thought she understood humans. She had believed they were weak, clever, but fragile creatures who relied on technology because they lacked physical power. She had been completely wrong. Jake was the last one down. As he sealed the door above them, he pulled out another device and pressed buttons on it. "What are you doing?" Zarathix asked. "Sending a signal," Jake replied. "Ambassador Brennan has ships in orbit. They've been waiting for my alert. Help is coming." "You planned all of this," Zarathix said again. "For 3 months, you've been preparing for a coup." "Not for a coup specifically," Jake said as he led them through the dark tunnels, using a light attached to his weapon. "For any emergency, fire, assassination attempts, military action, natural disasters. I had plans for all of them." "Why?" Zarathix demanded. "Why prepare so thoroughly?" Jake looked back at her. In the dim light, his face was hard and serious. "Because you're important. Not just to the Valorian Empire, but to Earth. Our alliance depends on you, and I'll be damned if I let some radical soldiers take you down on my watch." Explosions echoed above them. The coup soldiers were searching the palace. "We need to keep moving," Jake said. "We're not safe yet. Not even close." The maintenance tunnels smelled of chemicals and metal. Jake led the group through the darkness, with confidence that came from having walked these paths during his morning explorations. Behind them, they could hear soldiers searching the palace above, shouting orders and firing weapons. "Where does this lead?" Zarathix asked. She was keeping up well despite her longer legs being awkward in the low tunnels. "The communications center," Jake replied. "It's in the eastern wing. If we can reach it and get the jamming signal shut down, we can call for real help." "The coup soldiers will have secured it," Crick said. "It will be heavily guarded." "Probably," Jake agreed. "But they're expecting an attack from outside, not from maintenance tunnels underneath." They moved through the tunnel system for 20 minutes, navigating pipes and electrical conduits. Jake stopped them at a junction, holding up his hand for silence. Above them, footsteps echoed. Soldiers were patrolling. Jake checked his tactical display. The device showed heat signatures through the ceiling. 6 soldiers directly above them. He thought for a moment, then made a decision. "Stay here," he whispered to the others. "Don't move until I signal." Before anyone could protest, Jake climbed a service ladder and quietly opened a floor panel. He emerged in a storage room, rising silently behind the coup soldiers, who were standing guard. They never saw him coming. The fight was over in seconds. Jake moved with brutal efficiency, using techniques that combined combat training with an understanding of Valorian anatomy he had studied. Despite being smaller and weaker than the Valorians, he targeted joints and weak points. His human weapon fired in short, controlled bursts, at close range. When it was done, Jake signaled the others up. Zarathix emerged from the tunnel to find 6 coup soldiers unconscious or dead. "You move like a warrior," she said, staring at him. "Not like any diplomat I have ever known." "I was a soldier before I was a diplomat," Jake admitted, checking the corridor ahead. "Special operations. The kind of soldier they send when they don't want anyone to know." "Soldiers were there. You should have told me," Zarathix said. There was anger in her voice now, mixing with the fear and confusion. "If I had told you I was a trained killer, would you have married me?" Jake asked bluntly. "Would you have let me into your palace, into your life, knowing what I was capable of?" Zarathix had no answer for that. They moved through the eastern wing, using paths that avoided main corridors. Jake had spent months learning the palace's blind spots, the places where security cameras didn't quite reach, where guards didn't usually patrol. Now that knowledge was keeping them alive. They encountered more soldiers. Each time, Jake took them down with a combination of surprise, precise weapon fire, and close combat skills. Thala and Crix were learning quickly, following Jake's lead and covering angles as he directed. "You're training us," Thala observed, after they cleared another group of enemies. "Even now, you're teaching us tactics. Always train your allies," Jake said. "Lesson 1 of Special Operations. You never know when you'll need them." They reached a position above the communication center. Through a window, they could see the large room filled with Valorian technology. And it was, indeed, heavily guarded. At least 30 coup soldiers secured the space, with General Krathzor himself standing in the center, directing operations. "Too many," Crick said quietly. "Even with your weapons, we cannot fight 30 soldiers." "No," Jake agreed. "But we don't have to fight them all. We just need to shut down the jamming equipment and get one message out." He studied the room carefully. The jamming equipment was against the far wall, a large device that pulsed with energy. Between them and it were 30 armed, trained Valorian soldiers who were each individually stronger and faster than Jake. "This is impossible," Zarathix said. "Impossible is just a word people use when they haven't thought creatively enough," Jake replied. He looked around the room they were in, noting the ventilation system, the power conduits, the structural supports. His mind worked through possibilities, calculating angles and timing. "I have an idea," he said. "But you're not going to like it." "I already don't like any of this," Zarathix said. Jake explained his plan. It was risky and required precise timing, but it was the only way he could see to get to the jamming equipment. "You'll be completely exposed," Thala protested. "They'll kill you." "Maybe," Jake said, "but I'm small and fast compared to Valorians. And I'm really good at not getting killed. It's kind of my specialty." Before anyone could argue further, Jake moved. He opened a ventilation grate and crawled inside, moving through the ductwork with the ease of someone who had practiced this route before. Even during peacetime, he had explored every possible path through the palace. He emerged above the communication center, looking down through a ventilation grate at the soldiers below. He waited, patient, watching their patterns. Guards moved in predictable ways. They had routines. Jake counted the seconds between patrol passes. Then he dropped. Jake fell through the grate, landing hard but rolling to absorb the impact. Before the startled soldiers could react, he was sprinting toward the jamming equipment. Energy weapons fired, scorching the air around him. But Jake moved in patterns that were hard to predict, using cover and changing direction constantly. Valorian soldiers were fast, but they thought like military units, moving in coordinated patterns. Jake thought like someone who had spent years operating alone behind enemy lines. He was chaos in motion. He reached the jamming equipment and attached a small explosive charge. The timer was set for 10 seconds. Then he turned and ran in a different direction, drawing fire away from the device. General Krathzor himself stepped forward, blocking Jake's path. The general was massive, even for a Valorian. His chitinous armor thick and scarred from many battles. "You cannot win, human," Krathzor said. "You are weak, soft. Your species has no place in our empire." Jake fired his weapon, but Krathzor was fast. The general dodged and closed the distance between them with frightening speed. His fist connected with Jake's chest, sending the human flying backward into a wall. Pain exploded through Jake's body. The armor had absorbed most of the impact, but he felt ribs crack. A Valorian could kill a human with one good hit. Jake had known this from the start. Krathzor advanced, confident in his superiority. "Your queen made us weak, but we will restore the empire to greatness, and we will start by ending you." Jake struggled to his feet. He was hurt, possibly badly, but he had survived worse. And he had one advantage that Krathzor didn't know about. Humans had something that millions of years of evolution had given them. Humans were stubborn. They didn't know when to quit. "You know what the problem with you guys is?" Jake said, spitting blood. "You think being physically strong makes you better. But humans learned something important. Being willing to do whatever it takes beats being strong." The explosive charge detonated. The jamming equipment exploded in a shower of sparks and metal. Communications were suddenly open again. In that moment of distraction, Jake attacked. He didn't fight fair. He didn't fight with honor. He fought like a human who wanted to survive. He targeted Krathzor's eyes with a spray he had grabbed from his belt. He used small blades that slipped between armor plates. He used every dirty trick that human soldiers had developed over 10,000 years of warfare. Krathzor was stronger. He was faster. But Jake was desperate, trained, and absolutely unwilling to lose. The fight was brutal and short. Jake took massive damage, but he gave as good as he got. When it was over, General Krathzor was down, his armor cracked, his body not moving. Jake barely managed to reach the communication console before collapsing. His fingers, bloody and shaking, typed in an emergency code. Ambassador Brennan's face appeared on the screen. "Jake? What's happening?" "Coup," Jake gasped. "Send everyone. Now." "Already on the way," Lisa said. "We picked up your signal 20 minutes ago. Human ships are dropping Marines as we speak." Hold your position. Can't, Jake said. His vision was getting blurry. Pretty sure I'm dying. Don't you dare, Lisa said firmly. Jake laughed, which hurt. Haven't been a soldier for 5 years. You've been a soldier every single day, Lisa corrected. You just wore a different uniform. The doors to the communications center burst open. For a moment, Jake thought it was more coup soldiers. He tried to raise his weapon but couldn't make his arms work. Then he saw Commander Vexlar leading a force of royal guards. Behind them were humans in military armor, real Earth soldiers, looking completely out of place among the elegant Valorians but heavily armed and ready for battle. Secure this position, Vexlar ordered. He ran to Jake, his expression one of shock. You fought Krathzor alone? Wasn't planning to, Jake admitted. Just worked out that way. Zarathix appeared, having followed the human soldiers into the room. She saw Jake on the ground, bleeding from multiple wounds, and her expression crumbled. You fool, she said, kneeling beside him. You absolute fool. You could have been killed. Probably still might be, Jake said. His voice was getting quieter. But the signal got out. Help came. Mission accomplished. This isn't a mission, Zarathix said. Tears were forming in her large eyes, which Jake hadn't known Valorians could do. You're my husband. My partner. Not a soldier. I'm both, Jake said softly. Always have been. Sorry I didn't tell you sooner. A human medic pushed through the crowd and started working on Jake immediately. He's got internal bleeding, broken ribs, maybe collapsed lung. We need to get him to medical now. As they lifted Jake onto a stretcher, he looked at Zarathix. Did we win? She nodded, unable to speak. Good, Jake said. Then the world went dark. Jake woke up in pain. That was good. Dead people didn't feel pain. He opened his eyes slowly and found himself in a medical room that combined Valorian and human technology. Equipment from both species beeped and hummed around him. Zarathix sat beside his bed. She had been there for hours, maybe days. Her large eyes were focused on him, and when she saw him wake, she made a sound of relief. How long? Jake asked. His voice was rough. 3 days, Zarathix replied. You nearly died. Twice. The human and Valorian doctors worked together to save you. It was educational for both species. Jake tried to sit up and immediately regretted it. Everything hurt. The coup? Crushed, Zarathix said firmly. Once communications were restored, loyal forces rallied. Commander Vexlar led the counterattack. The human military ships provided support from orbit. The Purity Front was broken within 6 hours. Casualties? Some, Zarathix admitted. But fewer than there would have been. Your warning saved lives. Your actions saved even more. Jake lay back, processing this information. Vexlar helped? Yes, Zarathix said. It seems the commander was not part of the coup. He was actually investigating the Purity Front when they struck. He just didn't trust you enough to tell you. Fair, Jake said. I didn't trust him either. Zarathix was quiet for a moment. Then she said, We need to talk about what happened. About what you are. Jake nodded slowly. Yeah, I figured. You lied to me, Zarathix said. There was hurt in her voice but also something else. Confusion. For 3 months, you pretended to be just a diplomat, a scholar, someone harmless. I didn't pretend, Jake said carefully. I am a diplomat. I do love art and history and culture. That wasn't fake. I just didn't tell you about the other parts. The parts where you're a trained killer, Zarathix said bluntly. Yes, Jake admitted. I was in Earth's Special Forces for 8 years. After that, I went into diplomatic service. But the training never goes away. The instincts never leave. Why didn't you tell me? Zarathix asked. Why let me believe you were something you weren't? Jake thought about how to answer this. Would you have trusted me if you knew? Would you have let me into your life? Into your palace? If you knew I was trained to kill efficiently and had weapons hidden in our bedroom? Zarathix started to answer, then stopped. After a long moment, she said quietly, "No, I would not have." "Exactly," Jake said. "And Earth needed this alliance. We needed you to trust us. So they sent someone who could be both things. A real diplomat who genuinely wanted peace, but also someone who could protect that peace if necessary. You manipulated me," Zarathix said. "I protected you," Jake corrected gently. "There's a difference. Everything I felt was real. Everything we shared was genuine. I just didn't share all of me." Zarathix stood and walked to the window. Outside, the city was being repaired. Damage from the coup was visible everywhere, but work crews were already rebuilding. "Commander Vexlar told me something interesting," she said. "He said that after reviewing the palace security footage and examining your movements over the past 3 months, he realized you had been conducting reconnaissance. You mapped every corridor, every exit, every security system. You befriended key staff members. You positioned yourself strategically, and you did it so naturally that no one noticed." "Preparation," Jake said. "That's what humans do. We hope for the best and prepare for the worst." "The garden," Zarathix said, turning to face him. "The location you chose. It has sightlines to 3 important corridors. It required structural modifications that let you study the palace's building systems. And you planted roses, beautiful flowers with thorns. I did tell you," Jake said with a slight smile. "Beautiful things can protect themselves." "You were telling me about humanity," Zarathix realized. "The whole time. I just didn't understand." Jake nodded. "Humans spent 10,000 years fighting each other before we ever left Earth. We had wars that killed millions. We developed weapons that could destroy our entire planet. We were really, really good at violence. But then, we decided to be better. We chose peace. We chose diplomacy. We chose to explore and learn instead of conquer. But we never forgot how to fight. We can't afford to forget. Because the universe is dangerous," Zarathix said softly. "Because the universe is dangerous," Jake agreed. "And because peace only works when you're capable of protecting it. A peace you can't defend isn't peace. It's just waiting to be conquered." "Jake." Zarathix came back to his bedside. She sat down slowly, her large frame settling into the chair. "I thought I understood humans. I believed you were weak. Clever but fragile. Children playing with toys you barely understood. That's what we wanted you to think," Jake said honestly. "It's safer that way. People don't attack those they think are harmless. But you're not harmless," Zarathix said. "Not at all. You're patient and kind and diplomatic. But underneath that, you're capable of extreme violence when necessary. It's terrifying, is it?" Jake asked quietly. "Or is it reassuring? You know now that when I said I would stand beside you no matter what, I meant it, literally. I will fight for you. I will kill for you. I will die for you if necessary. Not because I have to, but because I choose to." Zarathix reached out and took his hand gently. "The human doctors told me something while they were working to save you. They said that humans have high pain tolerance and remarkable resilience. They heal from injuries that would kill other species. They adapt to situations that others can't survive. And they have something they call spite, the ability to keep going just because someone said they couldn't. Spite is a powerful motivator," Jake said with a slight grin. "You fought General Krathzor alone," Zarathix said. "He was bigger, stronger, faster. By all logic, you should have died. In seconds." "Probably should have," Jake agreed. "But humans are really good at refusing to die when it's inconvenient." Zarathix made that sound that was like laughing. "I understand now why Earth has been so successful. Despite being a young species. You don't conquer. You don't demand. You offer friendship and partnership. But anyone who mistakes that for weakness makes a fatal error. We prefer friendship, Jake said. It's more profitable in the long run. But we're not pushovers. Over the next few days, as Jake recovered, the full extent of what had happened became clear. The coup had involved nearly a third of the Valorian military, but it had collapsed quickly once communications were restored. Human ships had dropped marine units at key locations, working alongside loyal Valorian forces. The coordination between the two species had been remarkably effective. Ambassador Brennan visited Jake in the hospital. She stood beside his bed, looking at the medical readouts with a practiced eye. "You did good work, soldier," she said. "I'm not a soldier anymore," Jake reminded her. "You'll always be a soldier," Lisa replied. "But now you're a soldier who uses words more than weapons. That's evolution, not retirement." "How's Earth taking all this?" Jake asked. "Mixed reactions," Lisa admitted. "Some people are happy we helped save the Valorian government. Others are concerned we showed too much of our capabilities. But overall, the alliance is stronger now. Nothing builds trust like fighting together." "That was always the plan, wasn't it?" Jake said. "Send me here not just as a diplomat, but as a contingency. Someone who could protect the alliance if things went wrong." Lisa didn't confirm or deny it. She just smiled slightly. "Get better. The galaxy is watching Earth now. They thought they understood us. Now they're realizing they don't. We need to manage that carefully." When Zarathix was allowed to take Jake back to the royal chambers, she insisted on helping him herself. She supported his weight as they walked slowly through the repaired palace corridors. Guards bowed as they passed, but Jake noticed the looks were different now. There was respect in those glances, even wariness. In their chambers, Zarathix helped Jake sit down carefully. Then she walked to the earth garden he had built. The roses were still blooming, beautiful, and thorned. "I want to learn more about humans," she said. "Really learn. Not just the surface you show the galaxy, but who you truly are." "That might be scary," Jake warned. "I'm already scared," Zarathix admitted. "But I'm also fascinated. Your species survived 10,000 years of war and chose peace. That takes strength I'm not sure my people have." "Your people fought beside us," Jake pointed out. "Vexlar and the loyal forces. They showed strength too, because you taught them," Zarathix said. "In 3 days of crisis, you taught Crix and Thala tactics they had never considered. You coordinated human and Valorian forces in ways our military had never tried. You were a teacher, even in the middle of battle." "Force multiplication," Jake said. "One soldier, teaching others, makes everyone stronger. That's another human lesson. We survived because we worked together." Zarathix turned to face him. "I want to propose something to the Valorian High Council. A new kind of alliance with Earth. Not one where we see you as junior partners, but as equals. True equals." "Probably," Jake said. "That's what we wanted from the start. But we knew we had to prove ourselves first. The universe respects strength, so we had to show we had it, even though we prefer not to use it." "You know what terrifies me most?" Zarathix asked. "Realizing that for 3 months, I slept beside someone who could have killed me at any moment. Someone trained to do exactly that. And I never knew. But I didn't," Jake said softly, "because that's not what I wanted. I wanted what we have now. A partnership. A relationship. Something real." Zarathix moved to sit beside him. "When you fought Krath Zor, you nearly died protecting me. Protecting my empire. Why?" "Because you're important to me," Jake said simply. "Not because I was ordered to protect you. Not because Earth needs the alliance. Because in these 3 months, I grew to care about you. And humans protect what they care about. Sometimes, stupidly." Zarathix leaned her head against his shoulder, careful of his injuries. "I care about you too. Even knowing what you are. Maybe especially knowing what you are. You're beautiful and thorned, Like your roses. Jake smiled. That's the nicest thing anyone's ever called me. They sat together in silence, watching Earth rise over the palace horizon. The planet was visible in the morning sky, a blue and green sphere that represented everything Jake had left behind and everything he was protecting. Tell me about Earth, Zarathix said softly. Tell me about the wars, about how you survived, about how you became who you are. It's a long story, Jake warned. We have time, Zarathix replied. And I want to understand. Really understand. So Jake told her. He talked about human history, about the wars and peace treaties, about the empires that rose and fell, about the species that learned to work together despite their differences. He told her about violence and redemption, about mistakes and growth. And Zarathix listened, beginning to understand that humans were neither weak nor simple. They were survivors who had learned to be something better than what they had been. They were warriors who chose to be diplomats. They were a species that carried weapons but hoped never to use them. In the garden below, the roses continued to bloom, beautiful and protected, just like the alliance between Earth and the Valorian Empire, just like the marriage between a human soldier turned diplomat and an alien queen who had finally learned what humans truly were. Dangerous when threatened, loyal when befriended, and always prepared for whatever came next.